Episode 1, The Music Box in New York. The year was 1902. New York at night was heavy with clouds, the moon almost forgotten behind the autumn mist. And yet in the corner of a narrow street, a little music box shop glowed faintly. Inside the dusty window, an old music box turned slowly, playing a tune that sounded as if it had traveled from another world, the Greensleeves of Korea. A pair of soldiers' boots stopped in front of the shop. It was Eugene. His face still carried the scratches of war, but his eyes, they were older than his years. He remembered a winter night long ago back in Korea, when he was only a boy crying under snowflakes. Now he stood in the same pose but on the other side of the ocean. Only the music remembered both nights. Days later, Eugene walked down a long, marble hallway in the Marine Corps headquarters. Every soldier he passed saluted him with respect. Behind one office door, a firm voice called, "Come in." Inside sat Kyle, Eugene's comrade. The war had left Kyle in a wheelchair, his right arm wrapped tightly in bandages. But even so, he poured himself a drink with a crooked smile. "Shouldn't you still be in the hospital?" Eugene asked quietly. Kyle chuckled, raising his injured hand. "They say I'll walk again, but shooting a rifle, that dream's gone." He took a sip. Eugene's gaze lingered on the bandages. Kyle noticed and waved him off. "Don't look so grim. At least I'm alive. And thanks to you, dragged out of that muddy trench. Tell me, how on earth did you carry me?" Eugene allowed himself a thin smile. "Maybe I was hoping for a promotion?" Kyle laughed out loud. "Well, your plan worked. Congratulations, Captain Choi. One rank up." Eugene blinked. "Captain?" Before Kyle could say more, another voice filled the room, steady, commanding. It was President Theodore Roosevelt himself, gentlemen. The White House. The Grand Hall was empty, which somehow made it feel even larger. Heavy curtains, the great flag, and at the center, a spinning globe glittering under sunlight. Roosevelt placed his hand on the globe and stopped it, his finger, pointing directly at the Korean peninsula. "Our future," he said, "will be decided not by the Atlantic, but by what we gain across the Pacific." Kyle and Eugene stood at attention. Their new ranks shone proudly: Major Kyle Moore, Captain Eugene Choi. Roosevelt's eyes narrowed. "Take a kind word and a big stick. You will go to Chuseon." "Yes, sir." In the corridor afterward, Kyle wheeled beside Eugene, grinning. "Good news or bad news?" Eugene walked silently until Kyle pressed again. "Come on. At least Joseon is your homeland." "Isn't that good?" Eugene stopped. His voice was calm but carried an old ache. "I was born in Joseon, but America's my home. Joseon never had me, not even once." His eyes dimmed, not with anger, but with the quiet sorrow of a man who had lost his roots long ago. Later in the Navy archives, Eugene sifted through old reports. He found photographs from 1871 American warships off the coast of Korea. Prisoners lined up, the old flag of Joseon captured on a deck. Among the faces in the faded images, he spotted one young boy, terrified yet unbroken. The date read June 10th, 1871. Thick fog. Blood-red sunset. 5 American warships advancing toward Gangwon Island. And in Eugene's memory, the sound of cannon fire thundered once more. Thus began the story. A boy torn from his homeland, a soldier rising in America, and a path that would carry him back to the very land that once abandoned him. Between music box melodies and the echo of cannon fire, Eugene Choi's journey was only just beginning. Episode 2, Fog over Gangwon Island. The archive smelled of dust and ink. Eugene's fingers trembled slightly as he turned the stiff pages of an old naval report. The letters stared back at him: June 10th, 1871, heavy fog. As his eyes scanned the date, the paper blurred, and in its place rose the red sunset over the West Sea. 5 American warships, black against the sky, moved like shadows toward Gangwon Island. On the palace floor in Seoul, young King Gojong sat silent while ministers argued. One voice thundered, "The barbarians come with 5 ships." Another cut in sharply, "We must resist as our fathers resisted before us." The Daewon-gun, the king's father, slammed his palm down. "They are no better than wild beasts. We meet beast with fire." The young king looked from face to face, lips pressed shut. History would call him king, but in that room, He was only a boy too young and far too alone. Meanwhile, in the courtyard of a nobleman's house, fear brewed in a different shape. A servant family was accused of planning escape. The master's laughter was sharp as a blade. Daring to run, a slave's sin is the master's fortune. Show them what happens. Young Eugene's parents were dragged into the yard. His father beaten to the ground, his mother's cries echoing. Please, spare my son, she begged. Punish me, not him. But mercy was not welcome there. Little Eugene, desperate, grabbed a stick and tried to defend his father. In seconds, he was struck down. And when all seemed lost, his mother acted with the fierceness of a lioness. She seized a jeweled hairpin, pressed it against a noblewoman's throat, and shouted to her son, Run, take this talisman and never return. She thrust a small ornament into his trembling hands. Far away, Eugene. Live, even if I cannot. Tears blinded him, but his legs obeyed. He ran. Behind him, his mother's figure vanished into the chaos. Her voice still rang, Go. Eugene stumbled through mountains and fields for days. He drank from creeks, stole potatoes from fields, and learned hunger as a companion. Sometimes he cried, sometimes he clenched his teeth, but always he kept moving. On a lonely hillside, he met a potter named Yun San. The man smoked quietly, watching the boy devour leftover rice. Eat slower, the potter muttered. Food's no good if it kills you. Eugene lowered his head. I have nowhere else to go. The man studied him in silence. He wasn't rich, he wasn't kind in words. But sometimes the smallest act pointing to water, sharing a corner of shelter is enough to keep a child alive. And then came Joseph, a foreign missionary here. Like sunlight, Korean words tumbling clumsily from his mouth. Yunsen gestured at the boy. If your God answers prayers, then pray for him. Take him to America if you dare. Joseph blinked. Me? Take him? Oh, Lord, this is trouble. But when Eugene looked up, eyes fierce despite his tears, Joseph sighed. All right, boy. Come. Just don't expect chocolate every day. It was not a promise of luxury. It was a promise of survival. The sound of cannon returned. Ganghwa Island shook under American fire. The old fortress walls crumbled. Soldiers in padded armor fell under bullets that cut through like paper. Still, they stood again. They fired rusty muskets, swung broken spears, even threw stones when weapons failed. Among them was a boy, Sungu, 17, too young to die, too stubborn to run. He lit fuses with trembling hands, his face streaked with smoke and tears. When his father was struck down, Sungu's scream carried over the battlefield. He grabbed the rifle his father never fired and pulled the trigger blindly. The shot hit not a soldier, but the leg of a Korean interpreter, Lee Wan-ik, who had joined the foreigners. Wanik fell, hatred burning in his eyes. And young Sungu, chest heaving, knew he had just earned an enemy who would never forget. Rain poured down, drenching both sides. The Stars and Stripes flag was raised over the fortress, and silence replaced the cannons. Back in the palace, news arrived like thunder. General Eoj Yan has fallen, a minister reported. King Gojong's lips quivered. Then we are defeated? The Daewongun barked, No! They won with cannons, but they lost in diplomacy. We will not welcome their survivors. Send word those taken prisoner are not to return. In that one decree, dozens of captured soldiers were abandoned by their own king. Even ministers lowered their eyes in shame. On the deck of the American flagship, prisoners sat in chains. Among them was Shungu, bruised but unbroken. Wanik limped forward, sneering. Your own country has cast you away. They told you not to return. The prisoners groaned in disbelief. No country abandons its sons. But Wanik laughed bitterly. Yours just did. Then came a command in English. The prisoners would not be executed. They would be freed in honor of their bravery. Sungu stared at Wanik with fire in his young eyes. He would never forget this betrayal, nor the day his father fell. And far away, little Eugene, crouched in a wooden box on a ship bound for America, he nibbled chestnuts stolen from a sack, prayed the waves would carry him safely, and wondered if his mother's voice could reach across the sea. When at last the ship arrived in New York, Joseph led him ashore. The city towered around him, foreign and overwhelming. His black braid marked him as different, and every glance reminded him, But Eugene kept walking. He was no longer the boy who cried under the snow. He was a survivor of fog, fire, and loss. And so, under a sky that knew nothing of Lucerne, the music box played once more.